Welcome, guys, to Sound of Change, a podcast proudly brought to you by Unbranded Change. It's been a minute, and we are excited to be back. So deliver Iveli Kuni as we said we were going to do so. As you guys know, we're all about discovering and incubating business skill and artistic talent. And today we have Bongiwe, or rather, Innocentia Bongiwe Nkosi, who is a speaker, a writer, an entrepreneur, a brand strategist, an event facilitator. And she also does videos on Facebook, which are called Wednesday Walks of Virtue. So Bongiwe, it's very, very good to have you today.
Thank you for having me here. I feel honored to be part of the space. Yeah.
Ujabule team. So we are gonna be very, very straight to the point. Ngama questions uzozibona nayo yes laba ndawo bafuna ukungicela ngempela. So for you, what is public speaking, if you was a describe your career name?
Wow, what is public speaking? Public speaking for me, it's basically a platform where, as a human being, you are able to express your voice. I believe that every person who is on this earth has been placed to actually express themselves. So people express themselves through a lot of different artistry. Some people sing, some people express themselves through their writings. As you are also writing, there are people whose inks never run dry. So I personally believe that public speaking has to do with you expressing yourself and speaking your voice, speaking your truth to a people that have an ear and are ready to actually hear what you have to say. So for me, that's what public speaking is about: expressing your voice and expressing the message that you carry as a human being to your desired audience. So, yeah.
Good stuff. So, that's a good answer. It's a very good answer, and I believe abantu bayadinga vele ukuzwa the various voices that are out there. Actually, I love how you even saying ukuthi abanye ba-express through writing and others through singing. And also I was listening to something interesting enough, there are people who I love watching like those America's Got Talent and all that stuff, just because people who express themselves through dance and every other thing. So abanye abo Cristiano Ronaldo, they express themselves through soccer. So everyone has that voice that they have to express. So you need to public speaking.
Wow, let me to public speaking. Well, I grew up in a household where there were a lot of kids, and I was the youngest. I think there were about 5 or 7 kids in my household. I was raised by my grandmother. So for anybody to hear me in there, close to impossible, because when you are the youngest, nobody really pays attention. So what you have to say, So at the age of 14, they made an altar call for people who want to get born again. And I went up and I got saved at the age of 14. From that day when I got saved, I had this burning desire in me. So the Lord placed a desire in me to speak. They were always saying, Jorge, once you receive salvation, whoever has the Son has a testimony. So my testimony was that Jesus saves. So that's how I actually started speaking, because at that time we were actually led to believe once you receive salvation, you must share the message that you have received with other people. So that's what happened to me as well. Then I started sharing the message about Jesus Christ at my local primary school. I started sharing with my friends. So my friends were my first audience. It was 2 or 3 people. I didn't have a mic, but I started speaking to them and I expressed the message of salvation. From there, I spoke in my local primary. Then I went to my high school. Then I started speaking about Jesus. Then it was also at my church. they gave me the platform to speak what I want to say to the people concerning Christ. So that's what led me to salvation. When I got saved and I started speaking about Jesus. That's how actually I was given the first platform. I remember at my church, my pastor was like, "Come, we have a Bible study. Come speak." And I was like, "But what am I gonna say?" Because
Mm.
I felt like I was still very young, but I had this burning desire in me. Because what I believe about humanity is that when a human being meets with God, they meet with themselves. At
Sure.
times you don't know what you have on the inside of you until you actually meet the person who has created you. When you meet the person who has created you, he reveals things about yourself that you were not even aware of,
Good stuff.
you know.
So for when have you uyakuhlanganisa the career of public speaking with the calling leyo uNkulunkulu akuphe yona and wanting
Mm,
to share that unoma ubona
mm.
kuhlukene?
Well, it's actually one thing because for me, the calling is inclusive of public speaking, Rabon. Because public speaking is a calling before it is a career.
Wow.
I know that there are people who actually use it and claim that it's a career. It's actually a calling. You have to be
So,
called into something before you can
mm,
actually pursue it as a career, right?
that's good.
So if
That's good.
once God calls you into a space, at times you don't even need the training, right? You can get
Mm,
the training afterwards, but once God calls you, He endows you with the gifts. I'll make an example, ne? To those who may happen to be believers. There's a man in the Bible called Moses. When
mm,
God called Moses, he revealed himself. After revealing himself, he says to Moses, Moses must go and speak. You know what Moses
mm,
says? He says, "But you know that I'm a man of staggering lips." He was a stammerer.
mm. Sure.
He couldn't even speak. So why would God call somebody who's a stammerer for public speaking? Like, it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense because we know that if you're a public speaker, you can't be a
Wow.
stammerer, but God still calls Moses. Why, we look
Wow.
at people like Steve Harvey. I only learned a couple of years back that Steve Harvey was actually a stammerer. But look at him now, the stages that he embraces. He even has his own show, but he's a stammerer. So first you need to understand that you are called. Even if you may have some deficiencies in you, you are called. Then after receiving the calling, that's when you can actually help what is this sharpen the skill in the career mode. But first you have to be called, right? So yeah, so it is a calling before it's actually a career.
Wow. I love that. Oh, that's a lot. Hey, yeah, and I think it goes back to what you said earlier on. Especially mentioning Uguti, someone who was stammering, but they had something
Mm,
also to share to the world. So ngibeka kule nto kade uyisho ukuthi expressing yourself, expressing your voice. So even with our deficiencies,
mm,
on a physical aspect of our lives, there is always going to
mm,
be something that you have to do with what you have and who you are. So
mm,
I love that a lot, and I hope people can take lessons from there to Guti. With whatever that you are,
mm,
regardless of what you think is missing, if you are called into something, then you are going to be
mm,
able to do it. So I love that so much.
mm,
You just mentioned Steve Harvey, and it's interesting they opened the will mention. So are there
mm.
other mhlampe industry players that you look to or look up
Mm.
to, mhlawumbe nathi, and anyone else who is interested in public speaking can just follow them?
Yeah, there's a lot. The public speaking space has a lot of people who speak, but for me, the first person that I ever heard actually speaking on any platform, it was Dr. Cindy Trim. She's a
Mm,
lady she's an entrepreneur, she's a preacher, she's a humanitarian as well. Dr. Cindy
mm,
Trim. Yeah, she really shaped my life a lot when I was young you know, because as I said, Uguti, I grew up in a church, Rabo. So it was something foreign for a woman to stand on the pulpit and actually speak. The only person that I was exposed to was my pastor's wife, and I hadn't seen anybody else. Then one day I was watching television and I saw this woman. I was like, oh, so there are women who actually do what I have a burning desire for. because at
mm,
times you may want to do something, but you may feel inferior because you have not seen anyone else do it. You have not seen your gender go for what you want to do, right? But we've only seen males in the public speaking spaces. So when I saw her, I was like, oh, okay. So it's possible for a woman to actually stand on platforms like these and speak to the public. So for
mm,
me, we'll send it trim. And then the second person, Les Brown, we know who
mm,
Les Brown is a great speaker who just speaks on purpose and
mm,
channels people to what they're actually meant for. And then the third person, it was Miles Monroe.
mm,
Those are the
mm,
three people. Yeah, those are the three people that. And it's interesting that Miles Monroe, even we know that he has passed, but
mm.
his voice still speaks beyond the grave.
Crazy. And when,
Yeah.
when it comes to Miles Monroe, it's just crazy because there's this element of spirituality that he talks about. Mese
Mm,
ayiveza also in every other space of life ukuthi you actually need to carry this element of spirituality in this
mm,
career, in this leadership position and all that stuff in order for you to
mm,
be very very effective kuloko. So when it comes to you, when what the topics of interest are mhlambe uManzi Mandru, I know he would talk a lot about leadership, even if he's talking about marriage, but he would structure
mm,
whatever he's talking about. Ubon ukuthi, okay, there's leadership. He's talking about leadership right now. When
mm.
what's the topic of interest that you want to express yourself in?
The topics of interest. Well, number one, I speak on purpose
Mm,
because I believe that every person who is on this earth, every person, it doesn't matter what gender you are, you know, it doesn't matter your background, but I believe that every single person who is on this earth has been created for a purpose. And it is essential that when you are on this earth, you need to understand what is it that you're what birds have wings, have been created to fly. Fish live in the sea. But what about ubongani? What about usebenzile? How do I
mm,
identify who you are? And how to identify what you've actually been called for on this earth? So I speak on purpose.
sure.
And then number two, branding. Once you've discovered who you
Mm,
are, how do you then express yourself onto this earth?
mm,
How do you then brand yourself? What makes you different? What makes you unique on this world? So for me, it's purpose and branding. Those are my, so to say, purpose and branding.
mm. Good stuff. Um, so for someone
Mm,
who maybe aspires, let's say usetholile ukuthi uyi-speaker and they really really are passionate about public speaking as well. So what can they do
mm.
mhlambe ama-strategies to enhance personal branding yabo? So,
What are the strategies to do what?
enhance personal brand yabo,
Hello?
to enhance personal brand yabo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as
I
PC,
guess.
you're cutting. For one, I can say, yeah, I can hear you now. Number one, I can actually say identify your voice because you can know your voice, but if you've not identified it, it would actually be an issue. You'll end up speaking about what is it that you can brand if you don't even know what it is. The Coca-Cola, it's clear. Ukuthi they want to sell happiness, right?
Mm,
To this world. So what did they do? They packaged happiness and they placed it in a can. And they said,
mm,
we can sell you happiness in a can in the form of a cool drink. Why one? So you first have to identify, Wuti, what is it exactly that you want to brand? As you are a you are a public speaker, right?
mm,
In public speaking, what is it that you want to speak to the public about?
mm,
Because it's not every topic that you're going to be addressing. It's not every person that you're going to be addressing. Just because you're
yeah,
a public speaker, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to listen to you. Right? What is your field of your expertise? Number one, identify your voice, then identify your niche
mm,
as a public speaker. There are so many fields out there. There are public speakers who speak to football players only. Right? There are
Mm-hmm.
public speakers who speak to churches. There are public speakers who speak to leaders. There are public speakers who speak to social influencers. There are public speakers who speak to humanitarians. So identify your niche. What is your niche? Don't just be a public speaker who speaks to everybody, because not everybody has an ear to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm.
That is why there are people who follow certain artists because they are searching for something. So there's somebody in this world who is searching for what you have. So identify your niche. Once you identify your niche, it'll be easier for you to speak to the people that you are called for, because everything that you're going to be packaging, it is going to be sold to those people. I'll make an example. People who sell what it is, cereals, kiddie cereals, ne? When they market themselves, they'll be using cartoon characters, right? Because they understand their targeted audience. You're not gonna find a lady wearing some swimming costumes on a kiddie cereal, on a cereal box. Nobody's gonna buy that. But what do? They place the cartoon character because they know that who are they attracting? They're attracting the kids. Right? So when you identify your niche, it also helps you to package yourself well. Right? To also speak the language of the people that you want to communicate to. Right? If you're going to be speaking to doctors, by now we'll be speaking about stethoscopes and all of that. Why? Because that is the language of the field that you are in. So identifying your niche also helps to channel the language that you're going to be using as a public speaker. So those things are very much important. Know your voice and identify your niche so that you can speak the language of the people that you want to communicate to.
Wow, wow. Yabo nje manje uqeda ukuthi speak the language of the people you're communicating to. So mhlawumbe my question would be let's say you in a situation whereby you identify what the language that the people are speaking, the language eba pants in life, ne? And you want to change that. So
Okay.
you actually coming to an audience of people who are not aware that they need the products and the lessons that you come to them with. So
Okay.
mhlambe ama suggestions ongaba nawo ukuthi how do you then bring them to a point where bamukela le information oza nayo wena, which is going to help them beyeke le used to.
Okay, I would say approach. Approach is very much important. There are people that need the information that you have, but if your approach is wrong, but sometimes I think as public speakers, we go to people with this notion of when I have skill, I have expertise in what the people need. But your approach is very much important. You may have the skill, you may have the expertise, but if your approach is wrong towards those people, you cannot be able to actually reach them. You can carry a powerful message, you can carry a powerful presentation, but your approach to that audience is very much important. Check your approach, find out with the people that I want to speak to. We always say do what is this, an exegesis of your audience. Before you speak to people, let's take that you want to speak to scholars, for example. What is this, school kids, right? If you want to speak to school kids, you can come there as a public speaker and speak about the greatest conundrums in the world. And people will be like, what are you actually talking about? But when you understand, you say, no, man, these are school kids. I am carrying information, but how can I reach them? You go to them, find the things that they like as school kids. What are the things that are trending? But before you go to them, what are the things that are trending? Kids are on TikTok and they are watching videos, right? They are watching different influencers. So find out what are the things that actually appeal to those kids before you actually go to them. Because when you find out what appeals to them, it is easy for you to actually speak to those kids, because what time and this person identifies with the things that we like, this person identify with the things that we are interested in. Immediately when you do an exegesis of your audience, it becomes easier for you to actually speak to any person. So kubalulekile was identify your audience and then speak to the audience that you've actually desired to speak to.
I love what you're saying. And kunekhehla mina engilithandayo. So you mentioned abo Les Brown, abo Miles Mandru. For me, Jim Rohn does it for me. So Jim Rohn kunento akhuluma ngayo when it comes to art of persuasion. Most times people actually mongase ufike ubaxoxela ukuthi mina ngilana nina nilapho uzani lana, then they normally do not want to participate in that journey. But if for whatever reason nje kusho nawe ukuthi you identify them yini abayithandayo, if you can be able to actually be there where they are, bese uthi asihambeni sonke, then it becomes easier for them to actually journey with you kuleyo journey leyo. So I think leyo nto leyo issue leyo ukuthi how can we, rather than how can you identify with them, how can they identify with you? So it is important ukuthi ubabonise ukuthi how do they identify with you as well. And I think the greatest teachers are the teachers abakwazi ukuthi I know 1 + 1 makes 2, but let me uthi ngiqale ngikutshengise ukuthi okay nangu 1 la, nangu 2, nangu sesayedlala manje. Otherwise, if you're not going to be patient enough to go back to where they are, then you are never going to bring them to where you're at. So I love it for sure. So in public speaking, I know there are possibilities amaningi, and when someone else may call it a calling, as when we're only interested in what the content that we can deliver. But say someone manje usay tata as a career, usethi kanjena and I want to make money from this. So ubona nini ukuthi manje let's start making money out of my career. I know some artists abaqala beculela ematendeni, whatever the case is, bese ngeni la muthi ngisathi mina let's 5,000 buy what I want. So
Yeah.
public speaking, when does one monetize leso skill anaso?
I mean, I would say when you actually identify the work that you do, the value that you carry. Because if you don't understand your worth, I know people always use this phrase "know your worth" in to speak about other things, but when you know your worth, it's all about identifying your value, understanding your value as a person. When you see what you do and you perceive that as something that actually adds value in our society, then it will be easier for you to say, you know what, no man, I'm gonna charge you guys. I can't just be coming here on a Saturday afternoon and it's cold and I'm speaking to unbranded change. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I carry value. I am valuable. What I carry, it's valuable. Immediately when you say that to yourself, that's when you'll start charging people. Because there are people who tell you the content that is carrying, it's great. But if you have not identified yourself, you can't. You will never charge. You'll still stand on the biggest platforms in the world, but not charge people because you do not actually value the content that you carry. So when you start valuing the content that you carry, understanding with no man, what I'm carrying is actually different. What I'm carrying can bring meaning into this world. What I'm carrying can bring change in my society. That's when you can actually start charging it. For me, that is the when period. There is not a certain day or a date when you wake up and be like, I'm going to charge them 50,000 rand for my speaking. But for me, it's all about value. Immediately when you understand the value that you carry and the value that you also bring to other people, that is when you actually start charging them. That's it for me. There's not a day where I can say, yeah, I want, but yeah, when you see your value, that's when you can actually start charging. I'm not saying good to go out in high school, and gather children or gather learners and be like, yeah, but I'm saying see value in the work that you do, because when you identify yourself as somebody who's valuable, it is easy for us to say, you know what, let us also pay for the thing that you feel that is valuable.
So mhlawumbe, I know actually both should go together, but for when quick answer on this one, which one do you think should come first? Uguti, you identify yourself as valuable, or abantu bathi kanjena, okay, let's pay this person for this, noma bengakhiphela ama-10 rand at least uzile wazokhuluma nathi namhlanje. Which one do you think weighs more?
I'll give you a short story. Ne?
Okay.
There was this other time. I don't want to mention the company, but that
Okay.
company they're having a graduation.
Right.
So on the graduation, they were saying, no, we're looking for somebody who will come and motivate our students. It was actually a graduation for them. They were had about 1,000 students that were graduating in my local area. Yeah, so I was
Right.
like, cool. So the guy calls me up. He's like, we are looking for somebody to come and motivate our graduates on the day of their graduation. Can you please come
Mm.
through? I said, no, no problem. I love to serve. Yabo. And then
Have
you
to
know what
see.
the guy said? Yeah, I love to serve. This is my
Yeah.
thing, motivating people. I'll come through. Just give me the date and the time, yabo, to check my schedule. And at that time, I had nothing going on. I'm like, just give me, because as public speakers, I'm like, let me just check my schedule to make sure that I'm available on that day. And then he said, send me your profile. I sent him my profile. And then he actually called me up and he said, so how much are we supposed to pay you for this? And I was like,
Mm.
I'm just serving. He's like, no, there's somebody that we called who does the same thing that you do. And your work is actually much more valuable than theirs. And they
Wow.
gave us a prize. They gave us a
Wow.
prize up front. And I was
Wow.
like, I don't have a price for that. He said, you don't have a price because you don't know the thing that you're carrying. People are actually charging
Mm.
us thousands for what you are giving us for free.
Wow.
So you see that. Then he said, you know what? This is what we can be able to offer. Can you be able to take this? Right one.
But then,
So it
no, I think about it.
yeah. You're one. So what am I saying? I'm saying the content that you carry as a person, at times it also
Mm.
determines how much you're gonna be paid.
Mm.
Right one. You can
Yeah,
always
yeah.
have a speaking fee to say, no, this is my consultation fee. I understand that. But I'm saying at times allow that. When you think, no, I'm just doing this thing for free. But there's actually people who see the value of your content, who will actually say, no, man, can we be able to give you this amount of money? Because organizations are different. Right? There are organizations that will say, we don't have money or we don't have a budget for this. Or probably it's an NPO, right? Or it's a gathering of students, they want you to come through. So are you not going to come through just because they are not willing to pay you the amount of money that you're actually charging them? So at times identify, where are you speaking? It's good to be a
Mm.
public speaker, but where are you speaking? Are you
Yeah.
speaking to learners? Are you speaking to an NPO? Are you born?
Mm. Mm. Love that. Actually, Ulona, Richard Branson, I heard the story of him one time. Bethi akazokhuluma for, I think it was an hour's speech, ezothola ama-million nje lapho, millions of pounds. Wanqaba because he had an event he had to go talk to kwingane, which was for free. And I love ukuthi kuna leyo element leyo ukuthi identify where you are speaking, and then your pricing then is determined by that sometimes. But sometimes pricing yakho has to go upfront based on where you are speaking. So I love that so much. Ukuthi besikhathi siplane interview bekungekho indaba
Mm,
zama we can remove our masks, and we can
mm,
actually go into our spaces
mm,
without the numbers limit, and that what had
mm.
affected public
Public
speaking
speaking.
for that. So what are the changes that you did mhlawumbe during the whole pandemic situation, especially Kusa Street, to
Mm.
actually remain nisinkwa endlini as a
True.
public speaker, and if anything like that is to happen again, yini esingayenza to make sure we continue being the voice that people need,
Mm,
regardless of the space.
mm. Okay. Well, some people say that the pandemic was just pathetic.
Mm.
It's a phrase. It's a phrase that public speakers have been using because
Yeah,
imagine if you're born in 2019, about during 2019 towards the end, we were all proclaiming 2020 it's gonna be double bookings, double the impacts. Everything was just gonna be double. And in March, the pandemic was like, I'm gonna double your stresses and I'm gonna shut down everything. All the speaking engagements not there, you know. And you're looking at yourself and you're like, so how are people gonna hear my voice? But one thing that I learned I learned during the pandemic, go to there is nothing that can shut the voice of a public speaker. So what is it that is needed? Even the pandemic cannot shut the voice of a public speaker. But if the public speaker is not wise, their voice can actually be shut. If the public speaker is not equipped, their voice can be shut. If the public speaker is not at par with the current happenings and the current changes in the world, their voice can be shut. If the public speaker is ignorant, their voice can be shut. As a nation, as the world, we're actually moving into the fourth industrial revolution. Actually, it's here in South Africa where change is actually gradually coming about. In other countries like Abu China, they're already in the fifth industrial revolution. Tinelana, we are still shutting down our banks. Standard Bank, Kanavala, ama companies work, and people are losing their jobs because people are becoming more digitally inclined. Right? So as a public speaker as well, you need to move with the times. It's not just about you standing before an audience of people because the stadiums are shut. The public conferences are shut. So what is it that I did as a public speaker? I started moving with the times. As a person, you need to move with the times. You need to understand the times and know the seasons. If you don't understand the times and know the seasons, you are going to expire as a public speaker. So what is it that happened? I repackaged the work that I do. I said, okay. And for me, it's actually interesting because I packaged it even before the pandemic came, by doing the live videos, like what you mentioned earlier, the Wednesdays Walks of Virtue. We would do them on an online platform. And then I noticed Kuti during that time when I continued with the walks, again, it's in a video format, so but people can be able to follow. It's not always that you're going to be addressing an audience, like a live audience. So repackage, for me, what the pandemic has done, it has helped me to repackage my work. You're not changing your voice, you're not changing your content, you are just repackaging it. When you repackage it, it becomes easier to use. It's like your cell phone. We used to have tablets, but now they're becoming smaller and smaller. And then it becomes convenient. Imagine carrying a tablet to a public gathering, but now it becomes smaller and smaller so that it can be can be convenient. So as a public speaker, learn the tools of repackaging. Number one, if you are used to standing in an audience, by now no longer stand in an audience, but record yourself as a public speaker. Record yourself, record your content. You can do it in video formats, like Manja, we have a podcast. You can do it in video formats. You can do it in audio formats. Repackage. When you do it in audio formats and video formats, then you can be able to sell your content. Let's take Kuti. Your material is about speaking to kids, ne? And school kids, when they were no longer going to school, how were they going to receive content? It was through video, it was through audio. So you sell it to the public schools to say, this is my motivation to public schools kids, those who are writing their matrics. I have material that can actually motivate them. So instead of them coming to you, you can actually take your content to them. So another thing, writing a book has actually helped a lot of people who are in the speaking space. Taking the thing that you speak and you're not changing your content, you're just repackaging. I know that you're a great speaker, but what is it that you want to speak? Put it in writing. When you put it in writing, your people can be able to purchase your equipment. People can be able to purchase your content. If Utologuti in 2020, I was scheduled to speak in June. So what is it that I chose to do? I took the material that I was supposed to give to those people and I put it in a booklet format. Put it in a booklet and still give it to the people who had paid for the event. Again, you already have content, so you give it to the people who had paid for the event. Offer a course. One thing that I also did was to offer a course. I had an event that was scheduled for March, Kabanga, when the pandemic started. I had an event. It's called Kingdom Digital Masterclass. So what I was going to do in that event, I was actually going to teach the church branding. How do they brand themselves? How do they amplify their voice, especially in the 21st century generation? So that's what I did. What is it that I do? I took the content, I repackaged it, and I gave it to my attendees so that they can be equipped. Do not fear. I know people fear change.
Mm.
Even a school child who is going through puberty, they are complaining, why are my breasts getting bigger? Why am I experiencing some hair under my armpits? Change is scary. Change can be painful. Change is discomforting. But I want to assure you that what your brand needs, what your field of expertise need is change. And change is good, because what I realized was that I would only speak to people that I knew. I would only speak to events where I was called to. But when I repackage myself, that's when I actually notice because I'm able to reach a broader and a wider audience. I always say that there are 7 billion people in the world. Within the 7 billion people who are in the world, 56% of them are on social media.
Mm.
And the 50-60% people who are on social media, who is reaching those people? Who is selling to those people? Who is giving those people content? Who is making those TikTok videos? Who is making motivational videos? So that's when I took it upon myself to say, you know what? I can be identified as a speaker. I can be identified as somebody who can bring about inspiration. You can agree with me that during the pandemic, people started committing suicide. The divorce rates went up. Even now, I was checking the suicide rates amongst males. It has actually gone up. So it
Mm.
means good. There are people in different spaces who need your motivation, who need your inspiration, who need your writings. When you wake up
Mm.
on social media and you post a message, it is not just about posting, but it is about inspiring a person. It is about changing people's lives. So for me, what the pandemic did, it actually changed my perspective and it actually broadened my view. So I did not take it as a thing of, oh my God, my career in public speaking has ended. But for me,
Mm.
I used it as a tool to actually open up my portals. Today I'm speaking on unbranded change.
Mm.
How did I meet you guys? Did I actually come? Look at me sounding like a false prophet. Did I ever see you before? What am I saying? Do I know you? But what has happened? And Brendan Change was able to pick up to say, hey man, there is somebody who's speaking something here. There is
Mm.
somebody who's carrying a message that can bring about change in our society. As our society is changing, it is not for us to hide and feel we are inferior. No, you have a voice. There's a
Mm.
voice for you in the marketplace. There's a voice for you in our generation. Even in the fourth industrial revolution, there is still a voice for you. Just change your approach. Do not fear and say, what am I going to do because I only stand in an audience? No, there's many people that can be able to hear your voice. Are you aware, Uguti, before people would go to an event to tell Uguti there's about 100 attendees, but now when you create an audio, I noticed with the videos that I do even on social media, Corey, before I would reach about 100 people, but now you check the video just after doing the video on the views,
Mm.
you find that there's 200 people who have watched, even if they're
Yeah.
not reacting, because
Mm.
some of us are getting, when you're a public speaker, you are used to standing before an audience and hear the crowd chanting and clapping their hands when you speak. But this time around, I noticed that you would find that in a venue there's 100 people, but in a clip that you do on Facebook, already there's 200 people who have watched the video in 2 days. Right?
Mm.
So when you're doing unbranded change and you're feeling good, but there's only Usebenzile la. Where are other people? Why am I not seeing other people? You don't know who's listening.
Mm.
You don't know who's listening. Do not be discouraged and feel that people are not pulling through. There's people who are actually listening. Some of them will not comment. Some of them will not
Mm.
even tell you that they shared the video. It was a month ago when I was in Pretoria and somebody recited a phrase that I had said in one of my Wednesday's works of virtue. I was not even aware. I did not know the person.
Mm.
But even Nani with unbranded change, there's somebody who's listening. There is somebody
Mm.
who's being inspired. There is somebody whose destiny is changing and somebody whose destiny is being shifted just for listening to unbranded change. Right? So it's all about defying the norms and moving with the times. Do not fall behind as a public speaker. Still, you are carrying on to your paper. You want to speak to an audience. It's not going to be like that. If change is going to come, we should align ourselves. So Ngitini, repackage yourself as a public speaker and then realign yourself to the times that we are living in and you'll flourish, man.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. And for when on a personal level, career yakho, what are you working on improving?
Yo, that is a very difficult question. What do I, when I was young, ne,
Yeah.
my desire in the world, I used to love this character, Batu Superman.
Okay.
Wanted to save people's lives, wanted to
Mm.
find people who are in distress. So Name was like that. I was like, no, I want to change the world, you know. I want to bring about societal change and whatnot. But as I'm growing, I actually no longer just want to change the world, but I want to change myself.
Sure. Okay. Interesting.
I want to change myself because when I change myself, I am aware, Guti, I still need improvement. I still need to be equipped. I still need to read those John C. Maxwell books. I still need to read those Miles Monroe books because when I change myself, it is easy then for me to change those who are around me. Cannot change people if when as a person you are not changing. If when as a person you're not
Yeah.
evolving. Yeah, but
That's true.
so for me, it's about evolving in my space, gaining more knowledge and being more exposed. I think at times you can get into a comfort zone as a public speaker. You can still be carrying this one thing, which I know which when I get into an audience, I'm gonna pull these two tricks, I'm gonna pull these two quotes, and the crowd
Mm.
is gonna go crazy. But at times you're gonna stand and the crowd is not gonna go crazy. They'll be like, okay.
Mm.
But so for me, it's about changing myself. It's
Sure.
about um learning and unlearning. There are
Mm.
things that I'm unlearning even now. There are things that I'm still unlearning and relearning and not being afraid to say, you know what, I thought I knew how to speak. I thought I knew
Yeah.
when I get into an audience, the first thing that I have to do is give them an appetizer. But at times it's not going to be like that. I have learned, Ukuthi,
That's true.
you must read the room. I read the
Mm.
room where I go into
Mm.
because you can go there prepared and say, this is what I'm going to speak about. But when you get into a room as a public speaker, I'm actually learning first to change myself, to learn, to grow, to read more. That when I have time on my hands, I need to read more and to learn, be more knowledgeable about my field, and not be afraid to say, I don't know.
Mm.
Most of us, as a people, we feel that we have answers to everything. I have answers to why people are killing themselves. I have
Mm.
answers to your brand. At times, it's not every answer that you're going to have, right? But so that's what I'm learning in this field. Ukuthi, I still need to learn. There's a lot for me to learn. I still need to understand the field that I'm in. Yabo. So it's all about that. Just changing myself before I can change the world. That's where I'm at. It's all about changing myself, being consistent, learning how to be consistent because people cannot trust you if you're not consistent. Some days we come on Saturdays at 2 p.m. to listen to Unbranded Change, and Unbranded Change is not there.
Mm.
But these
Mm.
people said that they're going to be hosting a broadcast at 2 p.m. They want
Mm.
so, and the guest disappears. So, what is it that we're learning there? Inconsistencies. People
Mm.
cannot trust a person who's inconsistent. I want
That's
that's what I'm teaching myself in this season, even when I'm doing Wednesdays works of virtue. So it's all up life is all about showing up. A lot of us
mm.
want to bring about change in our society, but life is actually about showing up. Just show up and the grace will follow. Just show up and the crowds will follow. Just show up, and the people that need to hear you will just follow. Our issue is that we just don't show up. There are things that
Mm.
hold us back. Maybe you are held back by your insecurities. Maybe you are held back by your loss of esteem. It is possible to be a public speaker and still be insecure and
Mm.
still, I don't know about you, even before I go to an audience, I still shake.
Mm.
I
Mm.
want even before I start a live broadcast, I'm still scared. Right, one, I still get those fears. I still get the anxiety. Right, one, but what I realize is that life is just about showing up. Just show up, and the right people are gonna hear you. Just show up, and the right people are gonna be inspired. Are gonna be transformed by the voice that you carry. So it's
Mm.
just life is about just showing up. Just show up. Don't wait for the perfect moment to say, Yabona man, this is the great quote, and Brandon Change is gonna pay me after this. It's not
Mm.
about that. Life is just about showing up. Just show up, and the right people are going to hear you, and surely you are going to advance.
I love that. I love that. And Flappy, I'll just say it myself because I find it to be a
Mm,
very powerful statement. Um,
mm,
then do show your Oguti. Some guys out there, they know they carry a voice, but
mm,
they having a problem with, okay, there's a poor who will be waiting out there to listen to my voice. And I love
mm,
what you say, and I'm gonna repeat it because if umuntu ofuna ukuyizwa lento lena akayizwisise ngempela futhi to
mm.
just show up and the right crowd will follow. So
Yo.
I think that's very, very important. I think
Mm,
mhlawumbe it's a challenge that every speaker, especially Musa Musha,
mm,
um that we encounter with, okay, who is gonna listen? And I love
mm,
this, say show up and the crowd will follow. I love that. So, this then takes us to the section is and 3 ideas of change. We'll
mm,
ask these 3 questions.
mm.
Yeah, and our very first question is, what book do you think expiring speakers should read?
Okay. Number one, the one book that everybody in the world debates about. Some
Mm,
people hate it. Some people speak bad about it. Some people
mm,
misquote it. Some people misquote it. Some people paraphrase it. Some people cannot even be able to translate it. Some have tried, but
mm,
people from various religions, various
mm.
systems of belief, they all have one thing in common. And this book is called the Bible.
It's a great book.
It is. It's a very interesting book. Even those who read it, they are still
Mm,
they are still struggling, you know. But for
mm,
me, the first book that a person should read is the Bible because the Bible defines all definitions. It carries volumes about who you are. It carries volumes about where you are. Number two, it's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
love that book.
Seven Habits of Highly. That book, ne?
Mm,
You would swear, because probably the person who wrote it was the one who wrote the Bible, but it's not. But yeah, get yourself get yourself
love
that
that.
book. Man, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It changed my life in a drastic way. It
Mm,
sharpened me in areas where I did not even want to be sharpened, in areas that I
mm, mm,
neglected,
mm.
areas that I
Love
neglected.
that.
Yeah. The third
Mm.
book that I also want to recommend, it's
Wait,
by a
wait, wait.
local
Before you go to the third book, I love what you said. You say it sharpened you in areas that you didn't want to be sharpened in, and I
mm,
think Nami Mhlambe, I can attest to that. There is
mm,
a time where Stephen Covey, who is the writer of that book, Seven Habits of
yeah.
Highly, Stephen Covey,
Mm,
ukhuluma
mm,
about I'm not say the word correctly, but i-focus yakho ukuthi you can be church focused, you can be family focused, you can be rather call it centered,
mm,
career centered, whatever the case is. And then
mm,
he says, okubalulekile is to find balance in all these areas of
yeah.
your life. And
Mm,
mina, taking what you said, I remember I was neglecting ifamily yami because
mm,
I felt ukuthi getting this spirituality angazi engenzani engamove ama-mountains, and
uh,
I was neglecting that
mm,
element in my life, and that book, it really sharpened that for me. So I love what you said ukuthi iyalungisa indawo
mm.
empilweni yakho where you didn't want to be fixed in. So yeah, you can. I had to say that. I love that book a lot. It changed a lot for my life as well. Interdependence, independence, dependency. I
Wow.
love those topics. Nekhuluma
Yeah.
ngawo Stephen. But yeah, what's
Mm.
that
Those
book?
are, so as you're speaking, there's just this thing about for me, ne, I love what you said, about neglecting a family because you can't
Mm,
be pursuing spirituality and neglect your family. It's like even people who are in the church circle, they forget that actually the first ministry is your family.
mm,
When
mm,
God created humanity, He did not create spirituality. He created human beings, and those human beings were a family. So
mm.
uNkulunkulu cares about
Exactly.
that. So I'm glad to see. Yeah. But for me, the issue of excellence. I'm a person who loves excellence. Yabo. I love excellent things. But there's a quote that I came across there. What is this quote, man? I'm forgetting it. Oh God. But he speaks about how he uthi, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. But at times we're not seeing change in our lives because we feel circumstances are beyond me. But it's not about that. Life is about understanding that you're not a product of your circumstance, but you're a product of your decisions. So I daily choose to be excellent. I daily choose to do excellent things. Doesn't matter the situation that I'm faced, because as people, we always, especially as young people, I am aware, would see most people who are coming from youth month, we are crying about a lot of things, social ills, social injustices, our circumstances. Hey, I'm a black man, I'm a black woman, options are not presented to me. I come from a poor family. That's why I am the way that I am. But when he said that you're not a product of your circumstances, in other words, I can't keep blaming poverty for my lack of progress. I can't blame ESCOM for no I can't blame ESCOM. I can't go back tomorrow and say I can't write the test because we had load shedding. I can't blame the fact that I was raised by a single parent. I'm not getting opportunities because I come from a single parented household. So I can't blame my circumstances. I think as Black people, we always have a reason for the way that things that they are. Yeah, I'm not able to be a farmer because I don't have land. We want land, exploration without compensation, all of those things. There is a lot, but that quote changed my life when Atu Steven, I am not a product of my circumstances, but I am a product of my decisions. Yes, I may come from poverty, but I have the power to change my mind and say, although I come from a poor family, but poverty will not come through me. Riches will come through me. It was about a decision that I made. So daily, I am taking steps towards excellence to say that it is easy for me to have a slack hand in my generation, but I choose not to have a slack hand. I choose to do things diligently. I'm choosing to do small things diligently. I'm choosing to show up on a Saturday afternoon when I could just be going out and chilling with my friends, but I'm going to come to unbranded change. Why? Because I want something in my mind to shift. I want my family dimension to shift. I want my generation to learn from me. So what is it that I'm going to do? I'm going to find my place in the right spaces for me to be fully equipped for the person that I am. Because you were asking me, the third book is Gifted, Hunted, and Haunted by Hosea Rampekwa. Please make sure.
I was printed. Gifted.
Okay, it's Gifted, Hunted, and Haunted. The author's name is Hosea. Yeah, Hosea Rampekwa. Yeah, and then the last book is by a friend of mine. Ugamalak Uspesihle Wakashabalala. He wrote a book entitled Well of Wisdom. Make sure that you get yourself that book. It changed my life drastically. So, Well of Wisdom. Shabalala.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Well of Wisdom. Good stuff. And then for you, what is that one advice that you would give someone who is starting out in public speaking?
Why not you?
Why not you?
Why not you?
Good stuff. No, but I think advice and those who a lot of the actually you're right.
Yeah. Why not you? I think people have the same effect even when they come into relationships. They don't want to go into relationships because they feel inadequate. They feel like I'm inadequate. I cannot be able to pursue this type of person because of, we don't look at what the person has, but you look at yourself and you feel that I'm the least. Yeah, but I'm not fully. Yeah, there's nyaza, you look down on yourself. And my question is, why not you? There's many people who are doing this, but why not you?
And with what you're saying, from the book you first quoted, Gunu Mlisa, who always nyaza naye. So what akahambe ngalamandla angaphakathi kuyena. So
Come
so
on
I
now.
think so I think also it goes back to the fact that some people carry a very significant voice, and looking
Mm,
at the environment abakuyona, then bengacabanga ukuthi no, I should keep.
wow. Okay, I want to see humanity seeking their identity, discovering their purpose, and living life to their full potential. That, mm, living life to your full potential. That's what I want to see.
Good stuff.
Mm.
Bongiwe, it's been a great pleasure ukuba nawe. Mhlawumbe you can just share ukuthi ikuphi la abantu abangakuthola khona for your work, and maybe interacting and learning from you.
Oh, okay. Well, you can simply follow me on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I am Nkosi Bongiwe. That's it. And just follow me there. And yeah, let's connect, man. Let's build each other up so that we can both be the change that we want to see in our generation.
Awesome stuff. Sabonga kakhulu ngesikhathi sakho, and it has been a great pleasure learning from you, with a few hiccups network, but I'm sure my listeners took great value. Thank you so much.
Sure.